Welcome to the Paper Trail, where we follow the journey, my journey, through the world of a CEO of a mortgage note fund. I'm Chris 70, and after years of buying, managing, and selling notes with 70 investments, I'm here to share the real stories behind the deals. What went right, what went wrong, and what I wish I knew earlier. From non-performing loans to seller financing to private lending, this show is about more than strategies, about growing your business, learning to follow the paper trail, and doing the due diligence that separates the pros from the rest. Now, let's hit the trail running. Today, I was honored to have the Strategy Ninjas on this episode, who has a mission to bridge bold ideas with execution. They offer entrepreneurs a strategic first approach across AI, other automations, consulting, and more. We got to dive into their AI Real Estate Accelerator course, some of the frameworks they use. Awesome episode because anybody knows me, knows that I love AI, using technology, and really wrapping how that can impact your business. Also happy to have them be a sponsor at the upcoming Paper Trail Conference, September 18th to 20th in Chandler, Arizona. So hope you enjoy this episode of the Paper Trail podcast. I'm here today with John, Lisa, and Alex from the Strategy Ninjas. How are the three of you doing today?
Doing awesome.
Great to have you on. As I always tell people, I am huge into technology, cutting edge things, and AI, and just everything that can, I'll say, streamline a business. And today there's so much information out there and companies that can do so many different things for people, but what you provide is so interesting because it's different than what I've seen others provide. But I'll let the three of you talk a little bit more about your secret sauce.
Awesome. I want to first, I'm going to go ladies first, the boss, Lisa. We're going to let her go because she has some good insights. And then we're going to dive into a little bit about why we think we're unique in the market when it comes to education and training and how we're helping those in the real estate space. But Lisa.
Yeah. I think we've been in this space now for a couple of years, and really the three of us came together about a year ago to offer AI education and solutions to really every industry, but we specialize a lot in the real estate space. And part of the reason for that is we all have so much experience in real estate. One of the things that we found, most people that are presenting AI in this space, they're either real estate agents or investors who are dabbling in AI and they like to share what they're doing, or they're AI people who share how AI works overall, but not really specific to this industry. And where we differ is that we really hone it in on how does this apply to this industry. And it is so moving so insanely fast that if you are not spending most of your time studying this, you're going to get left behind. So what we always encourage people who aren't actively teaching or implementing AI is find someone to guide you. And that's really where we step in, is let us do the heavy lifting of researching what's out there and testing everything. And then we'll come in and teach you how to apply it to your business.
Mm-hmm.
What I find interesting about what you just said is, and we see this a lot in regards to the lending space and real estate, is you have technology companies that come in and people are geniuses that come from the tech world, but have zero real estate. And it seems a lot of times they build their team tech driven, but not real estate driven. And then you have the vice versa, where you have a lot of real estate people who come in and they're real estate driven, but not the tech driven. So having both of those merge with the experience is something just very unique, because a lot of people I talk to, you hit the nail on the head, Lisa. They know what they're talking about on AI and just how to teach it, but they don't know real estate. So what they try and accomplish really doesn't maximize the efficiency or benefit that you could get from it.
I'm so glad you validated that, because that's absolutely what we've seen. And I think that's where we get to approach this from such a different perspective and really truly provide value. And I can say that with 100% confidence. Anyone who walks away from any of our trainings has something they can actually implement right away. And it's just so different than everything else we've seen.
And I'm sure it's just not going into Chat GPT and say, okay, give me a post to post on Facebook, because I know that's where a lot of people think, oh, I'm using AI, and it's, yeah, you're just having it create something, but there's so much more that you can do with it for your business.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things we've been saying lately is that these AI platforms make it very easy to use poorly. And that's something we see constantly all the time. And it's not anyone's fault. It just, you can go in there and give it anything and it will always give you something, regardless of
Mhm.
how well you did your part or not. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, I think the problem is that on one side, it makes a lot of people who are using it very casually think they know everything about it, and they're missing out on a lot of really high and valuable stuff they could be doing. On the other end, some people don't get any value out of it at all and they stop using it. So then they still end up losing the opportunity to empower themselves with it.
Yeah. And something that just relayed to me on that, John, was I'm a part of a group forum on real estate investing, and a lot of people started posting stuff, and you can tell it's AI driven because they got the M dashes, and it's okay. It's, you can just tell, and it's like you said, it's watering it down. And a perfect example I'll use that is very similar is, we no longer, if we're hiring somebody, we won't use LinkedIn to get applications, because we literally get like 1,000 applications. And it goes back to what you said, John. It's so easy to do something or apply. People just hit apply for every single offering, and then you get 1,000 resumes, and it's, oh my God, I can't go through this many. And you miss the good stuff with that's mixed in with people who might not be qualified. And that's what I'm also finding a lot now with some of the people just going to, and I'm just using Chat GPT. I know there's Grok and everything else, but that's just, I'll call it the Kleenex brand that everyone knows. It's watering down a lot of the information that I've seen out there as well. And I'm just curious if you've witnessed that in your line of what you do.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, you mentioned the M dashes. It's funny because we've talked to thousands of people in the last few years, but a lot this year, especially in the real estate industry. And one of the things we get almost every single time we have a live event is this comment that I always know when something's written by AI because all of it looks the same. That's true when no one's actually using it to its fullest ability or training it or prompting well or anything like this. And the reality of it is, I could give you something that I wrote with AI and you would never know that I used it because I
Yep.
understand how to operate with it. And that's the thing, is that people jump in and they're doing something really simple and they're getting something very generic out of it. And then everyone thinks they understand what it is. But the flip side of that is that there's a huge opportunity to press in a more valuable way to get something that's much more comprehensive and unique and to your tone and to your brand, and people actually get value out of reading it. There are ways to do that, but people are really missing the mark on that. You see it everywhere. It's not just this industry, but it's everywhere because they want an easy button to do something and they go to the quickest route and say, write me a LinkedIn post.
Yep.
And that's the prompt. And that's what they get. They get something that's
Yeah.
worth about that much.
And I've seen people who have run it through. On the flip side of things, I've seen one individual who created his own voice where he ran it through 9 different prompts that research. He's written so much in the past that it learned. And like you said, he trained it to basically read his voice, learn his voice, and now it assists him in regards to doing more documentation or responding to things. And exactly what you said, John. There is no way you could tell which was AI or which one wasn't, because he took the time and the prompt and put it's extremely detailed versus just a generic prompt that is, hey, give me this, which, and I'm come from a real estate / financial background. And on the financial side, we always use the term garbage in, garbage out. What you put in, how accurate your data is going into a model is going to give you how accurate the data is coming out. I get the sense that's a lot with AI today is garbage, less you put into it, the least desirable information you get out of it.
Yeah, we like to equate it to, I think people are treating AI like another piece of software. And it's much more than that. It's an intelligence, right? Say it's artificial intelligence, right? And I think if you were to ever train an employee, you imagine if you just gave them like a 1-sentence instruction on how to do X, but that's how we're treating it. And that's why we're getting a lot of people are getting these responses and these outputs, is because they're still treating it like, we always do these comparisons when we do our workshops, like a Google search bar is very similar to a ChatGPT search bar, but they're totally 2 different things. But people are still treating it. And I think there's a paradigm shift that starts to have to happen in the industries that are going to start using every industry at this point, where you have to train it. You have to treat it like it as if you were going to train an employee, take the time, or hire somebody to take the time to actually develop that for you. And then you're going to get something that's powerful. We like to say most people they're in a Ferrari turning on the radio and they're like, wow, this is an amazing sound system, but they forgot that they're sitting in a Ferrari with 1,000 horsepower. Like that's in our hands right now.
Yeah.
And people are treating it like a novelty.
So I'd like to pivot a little bit and talk about where your firm comes in and talk more about what you do. You mentioned a little bit already, a teaser of the differentiator of that extensive background in real estate and kind of AI. Love to have you share more about the programs you provide to people and how you educate people to implement AI. I'll say wisely as well as I'll use the term ethically as well, because I think there's ethical and unethical ways, of course, any technology can be used.
We think of everything that we do from a strategy mindset first. Like, what is the actual strategy behind why you're going to use the tool? And what's happening is a lot of people that were, especially in the real estate industry, they're trying to implement AI without a foundation of strategy. I'll give you one example. This comes up a lot, I'm sure, in your space as well. Everybody wants to automate social media. But the challenge with that is that if you've never had a system in place or you've never been consistent with creating your content with social media, and then you go and, oh my gosh, I saw this tool online by this guru that said you use this thing and it's going to automate 1,000 posts in 2 minutes. Okay.
There's about 100 of those people online, by the way.
At least. But what is the strategy? What's the process you already have in place? And so we always want to take a step back. Think first. AI should be first leveraged for the things you're doing in your business right now. What are the things that AI can actually help automate and create the productivity gains with the actual processes that you've already mastered in your business versus piling on new things that you've never even processed yet into your business? So that's the first line of defense. And then I'll go ahead and pass it off to Lisa or John to build on top of that.
Yeah, I think it's that. And what we see so much out there is the shiny objects and people chasing the shiny object syndrome and the easy button. And it doesn't exist. You have to understand how the foundation works in order to create a long-term partner with AI, because that's really how we should be viewing AI, is that it's our partner. And how do we create that relationship? Our approach to it is we're not going to give you the shiny object. Like, I know you want it and we're not going to give it to you, because once you have it, you're not even going to use it because you have no idea how to use it. And so the approach we take is we want to teach you how to use these tools so that it becomes that long-term partner.
Yeah, and I think something we talk about often is you don't really want, at least at this stage with their abilities, you don't really want things to be done 100% autonomously. Like, you don't want that. It's not good enough yet to do that. Maybe it will be at some point. What you really should be looking for is getting to 80 to 90% down the road, which you can do very effectively when done properly and set up your workspace and everything else in a way where it's completely comprehensive. When we talk to people that come through our events or even some of our programs, we talk about this idea of going post-prompt, where you can set up an environment so well that you don't even have to worry about what the prompt is, because the environment is so finely tuned to what you're trying to achieve, or a workflow or a persona or a digital twin or whatever the case may be, that you can then operate 80 to 90% fast. And that's not an exaggeration. You can end up doing something that would take you weeks otherwise in 15 or 20 minutes if you have finely tuned your environment to do so. There are ways to significantly save time, make more money, things of that nature. But I think they've bought into this myth of, I can press a button and it be done for me now, and I don't have to do anything. And even if that were the case, it's not something that you want. What you want is to get almost all the way down the road, and then you take action, control what you can control, and make sure it's the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. And that's when you get like the most value out of it.
There's no easy button or hit a button to get something. And I'll use an example of where this has cost some people probably some potentially, it would cost you big money. One thing I'll mention, for example, and it's all three of you mentioned, is the efficiency factor. You know, things that we look at are very standard. For example, we buy non-performing loans. And every state has laws about non-performing loans and the process of foreclosure and defaults. And there's documentation on there that each state has, I'll call it an encyclopedia. Now, we've taken that information and created a model for each state, along with a list of the attorneys we use in those states. So instead of having to go find an Excel form, now we've got a little prompt within Teams, a little icon in Teams that it's called our little foreclosure thing, where we type in who's the attorney that we use in Southern Virginia, and we'll spit up, oh, here are the three with the spreadsheet with the link. And that to me is using AI wisely, because it's doing the research that would take me time to find something, but it's not just the easy button. And the other component I'll mention about people relying too heavily on it is recently there was a large fraudulent activity of loans in Baltimore and several other cities where appraisals were heavily inflated. Now, a lot of people automate, which is part of AI, a lot of sequences of, okay, this happens, boom, I click a button, go do this. And there might be these AVM models, which are really, I'll use a form of AI essentially, reviewing comps, but they're reviewing comps of all the nearby properties that were part of this fraudulent ring that gave all these inflated values. But if a human would have looked at this and spent 5 minutes on it, they could have looked at it and said, oh, this doesn't look right. People rely too much on systems and automation and don't take into the human error factor. Or the other thing now look at is the fraudulent factor, and not every human is doing the right things. And this is why, for me, I'm always of the opinion, I think it can make people more efficient. I think it can cause companies to be able to do more. But to me, and I love AI, I just don't see my company eventually being like, okay, I'm the only person and I can just hit buttons to get everything else done. I need people, because you need people who can think and also understand the situations that, again, maybe AI can or can't, but there's always, I want humans too.
Here's an interesting way of looking at AI. So AI can know everything that's out there on the internet. What did they say about ChatGPT? ChatGPT-5 is that it's a PhD level, which, by the way, I just saw a test that said it asked it to how many T's are in Tennessee, and it said 0. So PhD level, I'm not sure, but it's close. It does a lot, and we can all agree. What AI doesn't have is experience. So think about that for a minute. It has all the knowledge, but it doesn't have experience. And when you start thinking about that, that's like a mind bend, but it doesn't know, it hasn't seen all these nuances of the interactions of the business world. And it may be able to make some assumptions, but the experience matters. And I think that is the key differentiator that people need to lean into. Is it's not going to replace you. It should enhance you, but it still needs your back end experience to actually make it fully what it can be for your business to scale, keep growing, and all the other things that AI can do for you.
Another example I'll use that I think a lot of people can relate to if they're sports fans. Today, take Patrick Mahomes. Gambling typically, I'm guessing, uses AI for odds on what's going to happen in every scenarios. And if Patrick Mahomes has a ball with a minute left in the game at the 30-yard line and is bringing it down the field, historically, teams might only score 20% of the time. So the odds may be low on that situation, but it goes the experience. I would not be betting against Patrick Mahomes in that situation, just like I wouldn't bet against Tom Brady, because of that experience factor that you mentioned. And granted, all the numbers say one thing. You're forgetting momentum in a game as well that could turn, other components that just really take that human element that is not part of AI. Yeah.
There's really no data for that. They can't take momentum. Momentum is a real thing. And when it happens, you feel it. There's an essence to momentum, but you can't put a number behind that. It's really interesting. So I think it's the same thing where, back to kind of John's point, what we've been saying, can get you 80 to 90% there. That's pretty far. That's a huge leap in the right direction. And then let me tie the loose ends with that 20 to 10% to get this across the finish line in a better way. Will it replace me? Will it not? I don't know. Depends. It depends on what you're doing.
Exactly. I would like to talk a little bit more, really dive into, you've got a real estate accelerator program. I believe it's a 4-week course for people. If somebody's interested in that, what's your elevator pitch, or what should somebody walk away from that course with? And I'm guessing it's not how to just do a LinkedIn post, would be my first guess, but I'll let you guys explain.
I'm gonna give this one to John because John's one of our main educators there. But go ahead, John.
So we basically take people from a foundational level all the way up to what's been referred to as agentic. It's an accelerator, it's fast, and you have to put in the effort to get it off the ground with yourself and follow through everything we have going on. And we take people through the process every single week. So it's 4 weeks, 1 hour a week, and each week stacks on top of the one before it. So we start at a foundation, the full dashboard, settings, custom instructions, these things that get anyone who hasn't gone through all those things already to a point where they understand the environment they're in, the workspace that they're in. Then after that, we walk through all the features, what they do, how to actually use them. And there's a big difference between the two. There's a difference between what a feature can do versus what you can use it for. There's a huge difference between the two. And everything is centric towards the real estate industry for this specific program. And so everything we go through in terms of use cases all reflect back on that. And then the week 3, we end up putting all that together. So we end up basically what we like to call like leverage stacking or feature stacking these things together, using one thing to build another thing to build another thing. And then by the end of that process, you end up having a fully functional workspace. One of the things we go through is how to build a listing to launch expert agent that's able to, you put in an address, a little bit of information, and it goes through 6 weeks of your entire listing process, scheduling scripts for social media, email templates, everything you need for MLS. And it's just throwing in an address, basically, more or less. And if you set up your environment the right way, you can do that. How much time does that save you? Weeks of time. But you set it up once, and they're able to use it in high value situations after that. And then the final week, we end up showing how to take all those assets we just built and start plugging them into different things like custom GPTs and other agentic type of platforms. One of the bigger things I think is mindset. And as Alex mentioned earlier, coming at it from a strategy first perspective, because all of these things change constantly. OpenAI with GPT-5 and just what they did last night, they changed everything again. It's this stuff that I've been in the AI Wild West for the last few years, and this is how it's been the entire time. It's never been static. It's always been evolving very quickly. And if you don't know, you don't know. And so one of the things we really do go through is this strategy first mindset, understanding the why behind you're using this stuff, and then how to future proof yourself by looking at it from a philosophy of use standpoint and not a shiny new object in the room feature, because when something goes away, you're lost if that's what you're relying on. But if you had a methodology, a philosophy of use behind why you're using these things, then you can jump from one platform to 10 others and start using all of them in the exact same way. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to be locked into one thing or one feature or one process. It's more about a mindset and the way you look at these things. And I think as far as the biggest takeaway from outside of the more tactical things that are happening and the more step-by-step stuff, the bigger thing, I think, at least I would hope so, is the philosophy and mindset that come with it.
You look at AI is basically anybody who's had a teenager who's going through that, basically AI 10x that is really what it's like with everything new coming out and just all the different systems of software. Question I was going to ask is, I know some people might use Grok, ChatGPT, Copilot. There's so many different systems out there as well to use, which a lot of them are backed one way or the other. Does it really matter for somebody, like if somebody's just a Microsoft person that's, hey, I use Outlook and Excel, Word, and should I use Copilot, or do you push everyone, more towards ChatGPT or Grok? Or I'm just curious where a lot of stuff you use falls into.
Yeah, so I'll set the stage, and then Lisa and John, you guys fill it in. Okay. They all have their own. We're a believer that you have to try to master one workspace.
Yeah.
Because if you go in and you try to master Claude and then Grok and then Copilot, what's going to happen is you're not going to get the essence of what is. You wouldn't go into Gmail and then go to Yahoo and then go to, God forbid, Hotmail or AOL, whatever, if those are still around. You're going to get
stopping dial-up, I think, the end of the month. So no more dial-up for.
Hopefully not. I still, every now and then I see the AOL. I'm like, is that still around? Somebody emailed me from AOL. We teach like master one, and we'll lean into ChatGPT because of the features. Memory, by the way, new feature. Claude just came out with memory. No other AI tool had that until, yesterday or this week. ChatGPT was the only one that had memory.
Mm-hmm.
So Claude's now in the game with that. We'll see what Gemini and all these other tools happen release. But if you can just master one, you can then transition into, like John was saying earlier, like the philosophy of use and understanding, because they're all, by the way, they're all replicating each other. Projects features is now in Grok and is now in Claude and all that. From a security perspective, we've heard, and we were at a Microsoft training, John and I, gosh, I think it was probably like 2 months ago now, and with Copilot. So Copilot's interesting where everything stays within the graph, their user kind of account. It never leaves its four walls. So if you're crunching numbers and data that's proprietary and all this stuff, it stays in your graph within your Copilot, which is, from a security perspective, that's what they put their flag in the ground. Hey, we're the most secure AI because our stuff never leaves. It never even touches our whatever server or LLM server. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So they all have their use cases. So we're big believers that, but you still have to master one. 700 million users on ChatGPT. If you're in ChatGPT, chances are the other players are actually adopting the features. Once we go now from Grok to Claude easily, seamlessly, Gemini, and they all have their different use cases. And John will kind of explain what we mean by that when it comes like deep research and all these other things, because they do have their nuance. But if you'd never mastered one, then you wouldn't even know what the nuance is. You wouldn't even be able to identify it. So I'll go, or Lisa or John, if you guys want to add
All
to
I
that.
know is the baby videos on Instagram that I see of a baby talking and stuff like that. Whichever ones those are hilarious and pretty good. So
There's so much fun you can do. Like I use this example all the time with the image creation in ChatGPT, but back when everybody was creating action figures, like I couldn't get enough of it. I lost so much time of my life because I was creating action figures for everyone I knew. I was like, what would they have? Because it's fun.
Yeah.
But beyond that, when it comes to really what platform people should choose, I think right now we're in a space where everybody is picking their tribe. If you go back to cell phones, we used to have Nokia, we used to have Android, iPhone. Eventually, it has pretty much whittled down to it's very hard to find a flip phone. I know because we tried to find those for our kids. We did not want to get them a smartphone, and it's close to impossible to find a flip phone. But you have people who have chosen their tribe, iPhone or Android. And that's really where we're at. And I think that's what we're going to see with the LLMs, the large language models, and the race there is people are just choosing their tribe. We lean pretty heavy into ChatGPT partially because that's the one most people are familiar with and already interacting with. They do serve a little bit different purposes. And a lot of it is like where they get their knowledge and where that database is for them. I think oftentimes that just confuses people more when you start talking about that, when they're like, oh my gosh, so I don't understand which one I should use. So a lot of times we lean pretty heavy into just ChatGPT because you're already there. Let's stick.
and that's what most people have heard.
Yeah.
Everyone's more familiar with. And again, it's like Kleenex. To me, it's brand name that everyone just calls AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of like where you're already at. Where should you go? Where are you at? Where's all your information at? All these things do have their own nuance, but the reality of it is that it takes a lot of experience and daily usage of these things to understand their nuance. Because this is what we do, I've had the paid version of ChatGPT since day one that it came out. I've been involved in beta releases for programs in the last 3 years, 4 years or so before they ever even hit public. I've used this stuff on a daily basis, and they all have their own art to them. They all have their own nuances. And you don't know that until you spend, I would say, probably 20 to 30 hours of using it to really understand what you need, what you can use it for versus like where it's better than something else is. For example, Gemini is fantastic at deep research. It looks at probably 5x the amount of resources than what ChatGPT will look at. The output is completely different. It's much more analytical and data driven, but it depends on what you need. It goes back to philosophy of use. If I want something that is more data driven and analytical, I'm going to go to Gemini. If I want something that's more like a book report that has a narrative and is written in the way that a human would write it, I'm going to go to ChatGPT. So I know the difference between those two things because I've ran hundreds of deep research runs at this point. So I get it. But most people don't have the time to do that. And I don't necessarily think that they need to. I think one of the more important things is, as Alex mentioned, trying to master one is super important for two reasons. One, almost all the features are the same, whether they have the same name or not. Almost all of them, almost all those platforms, Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, Perplexity, they all have some form of deep research, for example. Most of them can generate images. Most of them can search the web. Most of them can write like a human. Most of them can be like they all can do the same thing. Models make it a little bit different, and how you use them make it a little bit different, but you got to lock into one and master one. And the other reason is because whichever platform you start using the most is the one that you're going to be building in. It's the one you're going to be giving your files to. It's the one you're sharing your data with. It's the one you're sharing all your conversations. You're building out projects and has this context of who you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. And the more that you work inside that system, the more it knows you and the better types of results and more valuable results you get out of that experience with those systems. And for me personally, I put almost all my eggs in the ChatGPT basket, while I also have a tab open right now for Grok and Gemini as well, that I use both of those on a daily basis for their own reasons, because I know why I'm going to use them. But it all goes back to why, not what they can do, because they can all do almost the same things at this point. But it's like, why are you going to use them? And then really locking in on that. I think that's where you really get the best value for it.
As we wrap up this episode, I want to thank you all for coming on and look forward to seeing you next month. People want to reach out, learn more about the product, the course, learn more about what you do. What is the best way for them to reach out to you? I know you have the website and so forth, but I'll let you talk a little bit more for best ways to reach out.
Yeah. If anybody's interested just in learning more, just wants to get on a call, just consultation, info@thestrategyninjas.com. Just email us. You can go to our website as well and fill out a form. Our accelerators are every month, accelerator.thestrategyninjas.com. We have lenders, real estate, title. It's anybody that goes in there in any like ancillary, like adjacent space, they're going to get the value of learning how to set everything up. So we want to call that out in the sense that, yes, we're focused on agents and all that, but if you're even on an ancillary or adjacent part of the industry and you're interested, just let us know, because in advance we've had people join our accelerator and said, hey, can you adopt some of the weekly content to match a little bit about what my use case is? And we can definitely do that in advance. So if we know who's joining, we can then make those slight adjustments and make it valuable for everybody, even though they may not just be a real estate agent or a lender. Yeah.
That's why when we teach process over prompts, it makes a difference, because you could show up in pretty much any industry, quite frankly, and learn the process, and you can apply it to anything that you're doing. And it's not a copy paste prompt that just does one thing for one person for one reason.
If I took anything out of just everything that we just talked about, that last statement right there is probably the biggest differentiator, most influential, which is the process over prompt. It can take, but they're not learning anything. They've got a 3-paragraph prompt or whatever it is. You need to understand, like you said, that process, which then allow you to do other things. If I only knew, okay, this is the prompt, I'm stuck in that little box and I'm never going to grow. But process will let you build and build upon, which is really what, to me, is going to make the biggest difference for anybody involved.
Chris, you are hired to our sales team officially.
No, you don't want me as a salesperson. I am an awful salesperson. So the two things I always joke about myself is I went to college because I didn't have to take an English class, and I have a sales team on my staff because I could talk like AI all day long, but or real estate, but it really depends. Other times when this is conversational, but in a sales role, I hate it because it's a different environment and it's not me. Plus, I talk way too much to be a salesperson. I would never get anybody off the phone and they just hang up on me. So I do want to, again, thank you all for coming on today. And no, this is awesome. I love talking about this. And for everyone interested, definitely make sure you check out the website, reach out to them, and anybody, whether you're buying loans, originating in real estate, highly recommend. Thanks for coming on today, and I look forward to seeing you next month.
Yeah, we'll see you later. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of The Paper Trail. I hope today's insights help you sharpen your note investing strategies. If you found value in this conversation, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow investors. I'm Chris Seveny, reminding you to keep doing the work, trust the process, and always follow the paper trail. Until next time.